Okay, I'm just recording this. All right, give me a second. I'm just gonna share the intro deck for day 2. So hope you guys are all good. So I'm recording this just so the others can get the information when they're late. Thank you guys for coming back. This is day 2 for the FlashBlade Architect Associate. All right. So I'm just going to do a quick review of what we discussed yesterday, which is basically this, right? So yesterday we discussed an overview of why customers needed FlashBlade, a deep dive into the hardware and to the software. And if you have any issues on accessing the lab, let me know. All right. So if you have any questions on yesterday, okay, we can discuss right now. And if not, then we can go to today's module. Right. So I'm gonna pause for a few seconds to see whether there's any questions that you may have from yesterday's topics. Okay, so I think all is good. So let's well, I'm gonna give you an overview of what we're gonna discuss today, right? So first off, we're gonna talk about the features, the protocols, the FlashBlade supports. We're also gonna talk about protection, replication for the FlashBlade. What are the things you need to remember if you are sizing the FlashBlade? And lastly, some tips on how to position a FlashBlade. All right. And of course, I'm going to also give you a course summary about this. That's module 8. Okay. So with that, let's start our first module, okay, of day 2, which is, where is it? There you go. FlashBlade features. Okay, so as mentioned yesterday, if you have any questions, all right, and if you want to clear something up, please just ask it in the chat or you can unmute yourself, all right? So FlashBlade features. Okay, first module of the day. So at the end of this module, you're supposed to be able to explain what are the protocols, okay, for the Flash that we support in the FlashBlade for data access, right? And we also you should be able to differentiate what are the features on the different client access protocols. And we're also going to talk about mixed protocols here. So can we mix different types of protocols, NFS, SMB, S3? Is it possible? All right. So first, let's talk about data access. So what are the options customers have to access the data within the FlashBlade? Okay. So here's a brief overview of what are the supported protocols of the FlashBlade, right? So the FlashBlade supports native NFS, okay? NFS version 3 and 4.1. FlashBlade also supports SMB, okay? We only support SMB 2.1. We also support a native S3 access or object access or object storage, okay? The FlashBlade also supports HTTP, okay? So the only gotchas about HTTP is that HTTP access can only be done via API, okay? And most of the customers actually don't use the HTTP protocol because of it's not secure. So most of them, basically, we recommend them to use S3, which use HTTPS, okay? More secure, right? So we're going to discuss each of these protocols in this module, all right? So first, let's talk about NFS. So these are the features of NFS. So As I mentioned, we do support NFS version 3 and 4.1. Okay. NFS also supports NLM, right? And of course, symbolic links. We have new features that was just added in FlashBlade, which is the top users and the end connect, which we have some dedicated slides for that after this. Okay. So we also support directory service for NFS, okay, NIS or Open LDAP, or if you want to use Kerberos authentication, we can actually use Active Directory for your NFS 4.1. Okay, so authentication, as I mentioned, you can use AuthSys or 4.1 version, NFS version 4.1, you can use Kerberos authentication. Okay. Security, we have 1,000 export policies available as a limit. With each policy, you can add a 500 rules each, right? And that's already huge. You can actually get about 50,000 export rules in the FlashBlade, okay? And of course, in the latest versions of Purity, you can now use Kerberos 5i and 5p, okay? 5i is more into integrity checking, and then 5p is more for the in-flight encryption if you need in-flight encryption. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, there's a new feature in FlashBlade starting 3.2.3, I believe. So you can now see the top users, NFS top users. So you can use the top users for your clients, groups, or users. So think of this as the NFS client stats in Linux. So you can get the top users for your clients, groups, and users. So you can just go to the GUI, okay, go to the performance tab, and you can go to the client, groups, or users, okay? And you'll see there which particular file systems or users have the highest top users for the NFS protocol. Okay. So here you can query up to 10,000 active users or groups. Another thing which is a lot of our customers have been waiting for is the availability to use and connect, right? So newer versions of Linux have this new mount option called Connect, right? So this Connect, basically you can add, which is X here or 16 here, the number of TCP connections. Remember for ECMP, we check the hashing is based on the ports to select the blade. So now if you have very limited, clients in your customer's environment, if they have a newer versions of Linux, they can actually mount an NFS export using Connect, okay? And then they can add in multiple TCP connections, okay? So they can hash to multiple blades, okay? So the only gotcha here is that it will not work with Kerberos authentication, okay? Other things, it's only available running 3.2, okay? But it's now default for 3.3, okay? Okay, let's talk about SMB. So we have a lot about SMB here in FlashBlade. So there's two options when you want to run SMB in FlashBlade, right? So now we have an option for you to transition to SMB native, okay? By default, the SMB in FlashBlade is the Samba version, okay? Which is not that high performance compared to the native SMB, okay? So the native SMB in FlashBlade needs product management approval, which means that you need to call your account team, let them know why the customer needs SMB, okay? By default, the only SMB option that the customer can use is the SMB adapter, or basically it's Samba, right? So if the customer wants to move to native and he needs high performance SMB, okay, so chances that they will ask for SMB native. It's more high performance compared to Samba SMB, which has a lot of translations happening, okay? So other things in Samba is that it can only scale up to 15 blades. Okay, compared to now the native SMB, we can scale to the full cluster or more than 15 blades is necessary, if necessary. Okay. Of course, there's other features. SMB 2.1 is the only version supported. Active Directory is also supported if you want to authenticate via Kerberos. Symlinks, file locking is also supported. We also support interoperability between NFS and SMB. So you can co-access. So for SMB users can access NFS exports and vice versa, right? Other things. So SMB supports quotas if you want to add in a limit per user, or limit per file system, sorry, and snapshots per file system. You can also replicate your SMB file systems, okay? You can also do a full system rollback, file system rollback. So if you want to roll back your file system to a specific snapshot, you can do so, all right? So as I mentioned earlier, if you stick to the default, which is Samba, within Samba, there's actually two mapping modes, okay? The default mapping mode, you may remember, so quick overview. So if you want to have access between NFS users and SMB users, okay, there needs to be a way for user NFS to map to a specific user in SMB, okay? So they can share the permissions, all right? So in FlashBlade, that is possible. To do that, you need to enable RFC 2307 on Active Directory, on the AD. That's the only way, okay, to do the mapping, okay? So if you're planning to have co-interoperability between NFS and SMB, you may want to stick with the default, which is RFC 2307, okay? This means that the users will be mapped to NFS users on Windows, and on Windows users, admins can add in the GUID, GID, and the UID, okay? So so user ID and group ID should be added on the Windows user for you to enable RFC 2307, okay? For Samba, the other mapping mode is AD Auto, which you can call to the support and say, if you plan to use AD Auto, basically you're not going to use NFS to access your SMB file systems, okay? So that's the only difference between the two. So if you're Samba, you can enable AD Auto if you want, or you can just stick to RFC 2307, which is the default anyway, okay? So AD Auto, no multi-protocol access is available, all right? So as I mentioned, for SMB user mapping, right? So for native, you don't need to select a mode, okay? There's no more need, because now for native, you can basically use both RFC 2307, or if you're not gonna have NFS access for your SMB users, you just don't enable the NFS protocol on the file system, okay? And by default, it can already map if you enable RFC 2307 on the AD, okay? And if you want to move from Samba to native SMB, it should be transparent to the users as well, okay? Here's what I mentioned to you, the big difference in terms of SMB implementation. So the default SMB for FlashBlade is the SMB adapter, which you see there a lot of translation. So if there's any SMB request, you see there's a translation where it goes to Samba process, to the POSIX, then transition to a Linux kernel to access the NFS service before it actually talks to the SMB layer, right? So with native SMB, it directly talks to the SMB layer within Purity FB. Okay, so SMB native almost have the same performance of NFS and S3. Okay, the only difference is that you need to make a request for support to allow this to be enabled on the FlashBlade. All right. Another new feature on FlashBlade is the ability to enable sparse file. Okay, so starting 3.2, customers can call to the support and enable sparse file. So this can be supported for NFS and SMB and HTTP protocol, right? So if you enable sparse file, users can now be able to see the actual use size on a file. Okay, think of it as you can now see the actual usage via like a thin provisioned file. Okay, so again, 3.2, you can turn this on, asking support. 3.3 should be enabled by default. Okay. Another thing to remember, if you want to use sparse file, you need to turn this on, and then only the new file systems that are created are enabled for sparse file. Okay. So here's a some use cases, right? So if you do enable sparse file, so you can check via the file properties. You see there that like thin provisioning, if you have a size of a file which is 100 MB, the size on disk is actually just 1 MB. Just for example, here you can do file properties, or in Linux you can just use a DU. Okay, so some use cases. So some third-party apps, right, has better dedupe options if you enable this on the array. Okay, other things, licensing. Okay, so some apps you don't need to purchase additional licensing if you can enable this in the array, right? For VMware, right? So VMware can now see provisioned data stores, okay, instead of the thick provision, thin provision data stores. For Commvault, the dedupe backup can be used already, okay, if you enable sparse file support, right? So let's talk about S3. So S3 is a fast object on the FlashBlade, high performance object storage. So there's basically no limit in the number of objects that you can store in FlashBlade. It's only limited in capacity, right? So you can have up to 2,000 buckets. You can also add multiple accounts, 2,000 accounts. And for object size, right? So the maximum tested was 8 terabytes. Okay, that is tested. So if you have any customers that have an object that's bigger than 8 terabytes, let us know. Okay, because we haven't tested that yet. AWS limit is actually just 5 TB. Right. So accessing S3 in FlashBlade is basically the regular HTTPS access, right? Very similar to how your customers access AWS S3. Okay. FlashBlade also now supports virtual hosted style addressing. Okay, so if they have any scripts accessing AWS S3, okay, because they always map to s3.aws Amazon AWS.com, you can actually virtualize that now within FlashBlade. Okay. And of course, the legacy access via path style, which is HTTPS -hostname -bucket name -object is still supported. Right. Protection or object lifecycle is also supported. So you can enable versioning per bucket if you want to. Right. And then you can set an expiration of that version via object lifecycle. All right. Then, of course, security. You can add users for whoever who has ability to access the buckets or the objects. Okay, they will have a secret key and access key. Of course, you can separate this by accounts as well, right? And each user, you can basically add now policies. So we have built-in policies that is simple user policies, or you can also create your own policies or customized policies, okay, to have a more granular access to the FlashBlade. All right. So virtual hosted style. So we now have an option for you to configure virtual hosted style addressing. So in the array, if you go to the settings, you can add a subdomain to access your buckets. Okay. By default, you will see there the s3.amazonaws.com is already there, and you cannot delete that. Okay. So if you want to add more domains, you can add up to 10 domains if you want to. Okay. Just take note, we only support subdomains, right? Like dev.mycompany.com or prod.mycompany.com. It shouldn't be the main domain name. It cannot be the main domain name, right? And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we do support policies to access your objects, right? So whenever you create a user, they will ask you if you want to add in a policy for that user. Okay, we have 12 built-in policies that you can add to, right? Or customer can create their own customized policy. So if they want to have a more granular, okay, access via IP, bucket, prefix, they can do so, right? So for simple user policies, as I mentioned, they can use the 12 pre-configured policies. Okay, so by default, if you never put any policy for that user have all the permissions to access the bucket. Okay, or basically all the buckets under the account. Okay, and specifically the objects, right? And remember, permissions are still applicable across all of the buckets under the account, right? So you create an account. So for those that haven't played with the FlashBlade, then under the account, you create users, okay? And you can have multiple users. And of course, within the account, basically you have buckets. And buckets, you have your objects, right? And these users can access all of your buckets under the account, all right? And again, as I mentioned, we do also have customized policies, right, for S3 users, right? So they have more than 20 different S3 actions that you can do. So you can just create a policy, and then you can allow or create whatever, right? And then you can just add the actions that they can allow to do so. So like create bucket, list only, delete, right? And you can specify the resources. You can limit to a specific buckets, or you can even use wildcards for this, right? And as I mentioned, you can go up to the granularity of IPs, right? If you want to, you can add a subnet, or you can also add in a specific prefix, okay? Or a specific delimiter as well, right? So the delimiter is your dash. Think of it as a folder, right? So if you have an object, you have, let's say, for example, North America, then slash USA slash, let's say, California, for example, right? Then you can have North America again, slash USA slash New York, for example, right? So the NA here, the North America, is your prefix. Then your delimiter is this slash, right? Your delimiter, the good thing about S3 is you can use different delimiters. You can use colon, you can use comma or dash, whatever, okay? It's up to you. It's up to the user. So that's why a lot of developers now are moving to S3 because it's simplicity, right? Okay, questions so far before we talk about mixed protocols. Okay, so let's talk about mixed protocols, right? So first up, all protocols can be used within the FlashBlade at any time, okay? So they can use the FlashBlade at any time. So they can use object store, they can use the file system, but the only thing is that objects, right, is a totally different domain to file system, right? So file system users cannot access S3. Same thing, S3 users cannot access file systems, right? They are totally different domain, right? However, NFS and SMB can interoperate. You just need to make sure that they are mapping available, okay? So again, the only mapping supported in the FlashBlade is via RFC-2307, okay? RFC-2307. Okay, so Unix and Windows operates very differently, right? When identifying users and permissions. Okay, so Unix has UID, GID, Windows has SID. Okay, and again, these do not translate to each other by default. So you need to have a specific mapping, right? To make sure that they can understand each other. All right. And to map between to map between users in Windows and Unix, again, we only support RFC 2307. Right? So RFC 2307 again is you go to the Windows AD and each Windows user, you add in a GID and a UID for each of the Windows user. Okay, and then it will be mapped for the Windows user and the Linux user or Unix user. All right. So you control the mapping via RFC 2307. Okay. You also need to control who will define, okay, which clients can set permissions. Okay. So you need to specify who can have the authority, who will have the authority to set the permission. And you want to control this. Okay, so whenever you create a file system, there's a tab there which is multi-protocol. Okay, by default, safeguard ACLs and access control style shared is enabled. Okay, so shared means that the last permission, either a Windows user or a Unix user, will be preserved. Okay, last permission change wins always. Okay, so if I'm a Unix user, I change the permission, I can, and then the Windows user will see it. Okay, same thing. If I'm a Windows user, I change the permission, the Windows user will also see it, or Unix user, right? Recommended is if you enable safeguard ACL. So safeguard ACL basically means that if ever there's any change of a Windows ACL, right, the NFS 4.1 permissions will be preserved. Okay. Same thing. If there's any changes in the NFS permissions, the Windows ACLs will also be preserved. Okay. This will basically this will avoid overwrites for your POSIX clients. Okay. So this safeguard is if it's there, it's still safe, right? And then of course you have other options here, okay, which is on the next slide. So if you enable SMB, okay, so basically from the term itself, if SMB, Unix cannot change any permissions. Okay, same thing for NFS, right? If you enable NFS, your SMB users cannot change permission. Okay, so you can select which one you want to enable if you want it. So basically, if you want NFS, most of your users or majority of your users are Unix clients, right? SMB, most of your users are SMB clients, right? And you want to control the permission only via SMB or NFS. Again, by default, shared is enabled, which is last permission wins. Okay. There's also two dangerous options there, which is independent and mode bits, right? Independent, if you enable this, all the clients can have their own independent permissions. Okay, you cannot enable safeguard for this one. Okay, so safeguard cannot be enabled for independent and mode bits. Mode bits basically is still last permission wins, but it's mode bits only, right? And of course, you cannot enable safeguard here as well. Okay, so for legacy Unix permission, if you use chmod, okay, it will also change your NFS 4.1 permissions. Right. So more of this detailed information is in the user guide if you have customers who want to have more information about this. Okay. Okay, access control, right? So we support Active Directory in the FlashBlade, right? So you can add in an Active Directory. So if you want to use AD for SMB or for NFS 4.1 for Kerberos authentication, okay? So this is available as well if you want to increase the security. If you want to use Kerberos 5i or 5p, you need to have AD as well, right? For now, there's a gotcha here is that we can only support a single domain authentication for the FlashBlade. Okay, we don't even support trusted domains, right? So only one domain is allowed for now. Okay, if you have customers that needs multiple domain authentication, please contact the account team and they can file a what we call a request for enhancement, right? So RFE. Okay, admin access, we support GUI, right? REST API, or of course, CLI access, okay? And then you can have a single local user, okay? If you want to have multiple users, you can join, integrate with your LDAP or AD, and you can have domain users access the FlashBlade, okay? All communications between the browsers use HTTPS with TLS encryption. You can also provide customers' own certificate if they want to, right? So admin access cannot access the data or the volumes or the objects within the FlashBlade, okay? So they are totally separate. So if support wants to access the array, they can only access the logs within the array, not the data of the array, right? So again, it's secure, it's by HTTP, and if you want to use CLI, you can SSH to the management IP. FlashBlade also supports OAuth authentication for REST API if you want to use OAuth, right? So OAuth has been allowed in FlashArray for some time now. So some customers want it on the FlashBlade, so it is now supported. Okay. Okay. Somebody's calling me. Give me a second. Right. 5 minutes and then give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, apologies. Somebody was in the door, so I need to open it up. So apologies. Okay, so where am I? All right, so role-based access, right? So you can have multiple users. Again, we only support one local user for the FlashBlade. Okay, and if you want to have multiple users, you can you can join by LDAP or Active Directory, and you can use domain users, right? And then within those users, you can specify a role, right? So there's a read-only user, ops admin, storage admin, and array admin. Okay, so from the name itself, read-only user, it can only read, right? So you can just see the performance, check the file systems, check the buckets. That's the only thing, right? Ops admin, right? Ops admin is read-only as well, but this person or this user has the ability to enable RA, right? So he can enable RA so support can tunnel in and manage or troubleshoot the FlashBlade if needed. Okay. Storage admin can create buckets, file systems, create snapshots, basically the whole storage admin thing, right? But they cannot change any settings, right? Only the array admin can change settings, right? So those are the different users in the FlashBlade. So as I mentioned, RA can be enabled by your admin or your ops admin. All right. So RA or remote assist can be enabled if the need for support to tunnel into the FlashBlade. Right. So support can update the firmware, can troubleshoot the software. The customer doesn't need to enable a WebEx or a Zoom session. They just need to enable RA and the support can go in and troubleshoot themselves, right? So if you enable RA, it will be audited on the logs. So whoever enables RA, okay, will be audited, okay? And whenever there's an RA, it's all secured, right? It's cryptographically secure via SSH over HTTPS, right? So some customers, which is in the dark side, does not want RA, which is okay, right? But it's really a good way to fasten or hasten any support or troubleshooting by our support center if you can enable RA for your customer, right? Okay, so we discussed in this module what are the supported protocols, right, for FlashBlade. What is the features, okay, of each of these protocols, and we also talk about mixed protocol, right? So as I mentioned, S3 and file system, they're totally different domains, but file system, NFS and SMB, they can coexist. Okay, so SMB users can access NFS exports and vice versa. The only important thing is you need to have a mapping capability between the two users. So the mapping capability, again, can only be done via RFC 2307. Again, RFC 2307 is a Windows feature or AD feature. Okay, so on the AD, you need to add in a UID or a GID for each Windows user. So Windows and NFS can map to each other. Okay. Protocols, as I mentioned, S3, file systems, which is NFS, SMB, and of course, multiple features within those multiple protocols. All right. Questions on this module? NFS, SMB, S3. Before we go to knowledge checks. Okay, so if there's no question, let's go to our first knowledge check. Okay, which two protocols are supported on the FlashBlade? Okay. A, B, C, and D. Anyone?
BC.
All right. So
BC.
it's B and C, right? We don't support NFS version 2 and we don't support SMB3, right? Next, right? What is user mapping? Okay, I just mentioned this just now.
A.
All right, so it's A, right? So we map Windows SID to Unix UID GID, right? So we again, to be able to do this, we only support RFC 2307. Good. Last one. How can an admin control a user's object permissions?
C.
Okay, correct. So access policies, right? So there's two options if you remember. Okay, I'm not too sure. Do you still remember? What are those two? There's the built-in and there's
Custom.
yeah, custom, right? So there's a simple user. So these simple user policies are built in. Okay, there are 12 of them. And they're custom. Okay, customer manage. Right, so customer can create their own policy, right? To create to add into the user. All right, awesome. Next is what's the next one? Data protection. Okay. So after this, we're gonna have a break. Okay. But first, let's talk about data protection. Okay. So we're gonna talk about file system and object protection here. So first, we're gonna talk about snapshots. Okay. So we do support snapshots in the FlashBlade. We're also gonna talk about protecting your objects. Okay. So here we have object versioning, right? We're also going to list the features and function of replication on the FlashBlade, file and object replication. We're also going to talk about safe mode, okay, for file and object, right? So first, let's talk about snapshots, okay? So in the FlashBlade, same with the flash array, snapshot is a logical point in time view of a file system. Okay. Snapshot is also read only. Okay. Its snapshot are also immutable. They cannot delete that on the file system. Okay. You can mount the snapshot via a new mount point. It is also possible. Okay. But you can have, but that snapshot is only read only. You have also the option to schedule snapshots, right? So you can create a schedule and then you can trigger snapshots, let's say every hour, 9, 10, and 11, right? So you have the ability to schedule snapshots. Okay. So snapshots can be viewed in a file system by going to the .snapshot directory, okay? So if once you mounted the file system, okay, by default, snapshot is enabled. So you'll see the .snapshot directory there. So if you want to access the snapshot, you just need to go in and you'll see all of the snapshots. Okay. So snapshot, the .snapshot and the snapshot names cannot be renamed, deleted, or moved. Okay. They are immutable. Right. The .snapshot name again is also reserved. Okay. So snapshot again is enabled by default. You can enable snapshots by the GUI, CLI, or REST. So it is per file system. right? You cannot rename the snapshot. So some limitations, okay? You can have up to 512 snapshots per file system, okay? You can have up to 50,000 total snapshots in your FlashBlade cluster, right? So if you delete a file system, okay, it will also delete all of your snapshots, right? So just remember that. You can also restore a full file system via a snapshot, okay, full system restore. There's no cloning yet for the FlashBlade, right? It's on the roadmap, but we don't have that yet, okay? For object, there's no such thing as snapshots, right? And we're going to talk about that later, which is versioning, right? So if you have a file system with a snapshot, right? The file system, basically the file system name is just pointing to the actual data, okay? So you have chunk A, chunk B, chunk C, right? So if you, let's say they overwrite chunk C and you don't have any snapshots, right? Chunk C will be marked for garbage collection or GC, right? And then garbage collection will basically delete that chunk of C at some point in time, right? But if you do have a snapshot, okay, the snapshot is just a pointer to the actual data. So if you say do the same thing, you overwrite chunk C, the old chunk C is still being used, okay? And this will be your snapshot space, okay? Because it's now being used by your snapshot, right? So it will not be garbage collected. If you do have multiple snapshots, like you trigger another snapshot, this snapshot will not incur any space, but because again, it's just a pointer to the actual data, right? It will only encounter, it will have a space once you change this chunk C again, because this guy will point to the new chunk C if you ever change your new chunk C, right? So that's how snapshot works for the FlashBlade, similar to the flash array. It's just pointers only, right? So for objects, okay, there's no such thing as snapshots, but there is what we call versioning, okay? So S3 objects works differently, right? They use versioning. So versioning is how we recover objects when they are deleted or replaced, right? So they are identified by a version number, or sometimes they call it a generation number. Okay, so you can manage this versioning via the object lifecycle management, which you can do via CLI on 2.3 and GUI on version 3. Okay, so what will happen is the system will expire those expired versions, or will delete the expired versions. Okay, and you can have about 1,000 lifecycle rules per bucket. Okay, here. So if you do have rules, right, object cycle rules, right? So each object, if you delete it, it will have a version, right? And then let's say you override version 2, you will have another version. So for if you don't have any versioning, your old object will just be removed, right? So if you have object lifecycle enabled, you can specify how long this version 1 will be available. Okay, so you can specify that in your object lifecycle management, which is now available to specify in the GUI. Okay, or of course CLI and REST as well. Okay, another way to protect your data is via replication. Okay, you can replicate your snapshots. You can send over your snapshots to another location. So here we can send your snapshots to another FlashBlade. Okay, again, we don't have any licenses for replication. It is included within Purity FB, right? So there's no licenses. You can enable this and use it anytime as long as you have 2 FlashBlades. So you can have about 1,000 file system replication pairs at a time. Just take note that only 32 transfers are allowed concurrently. Okay, so this is what we call, engineering says this is a pool replication. So the target is actually pulling the snapshot from the source. Okay, so how does it work? If you have a file system, okay, in the source, you create a replica link. Okay, and then once you create that replica link, you add a policy for that replica link. So the policy will specify how many times what is the retention you want to do for this replication. Okay, and then once you create a policy, it will also ask you, do you already have a target, or do you want to create a new file system as a target? Right, and then once you create that replica link and accept the policy, it will now send the data over. Okay, so you can also do a reverse replication if you want to, right? So the target file system, right, can be accessed as well. So you can see the target snapshots there, and you can mount the target snapshots if you want to, right? But again, just take note, they are only read-only, right? So if you trigger a replication, right? Let's say you have a file system, you trigger a replication. What will happen on the back end? It will create a snapshot, right? That snapshot again will be sent over or pulled over to the target. The first snapshot on the target will be your baseline snapshot, right? Then succeeding snapshots that is triggered. So this was triggered depending on the policy that you created, right? So once the policy create a new snapshot, then you're going to have a delta snapshot there. So it will be incremental delta snapshots, right? And then, as I mentioned, you can actually access the snapshots on the target. But again, it's only read-only, right? The cool thing about file system replication for FlashBlade, right, is it is very straightforward. If you have played with ActiveDR, it's very similar, right? So it's just one-click failover. Okay, you just need to promote the file system, right? So it also works as a demoted and promoted, right? So let's say your active file system here, this is promoted. If it's promoted, you have read and write privilege on the file system, okay? The target is always demoted, right? And if one of your arrays goes down, the only thing you can do is you click the file system on the target or the replica link, and then you can just promote the file system on the target, okay? What will happen here is that the last snapshot, okay, will be available for read and write if you promote that, okay? And then if you already fixed the source, you can just do a reverse replication, okay? You can demote the file system on the target, so you can do a reverse replication, right? Okay, questions so far?
Just on that replication,
Okay.
Marcus, and promoting the snapshot copy.
Mm-hmm.
How does the client access it?
So
obviously, if it was NFS, say it's a an IP mapping to a mount point.
Yeah.
How does it know where to go and find the current running promoted copy?
It will. So basically what you can do is once you promote the snapshot, you actually don't need to remount it. So it will basically have read and write privilege on the file system. That is if you already pre-mount the file system. Okay, it's if you can pre-mount the target, and then if once you promote it, you will have available. You can now read and write to that last snapshot.
So there's a little bit of background work that has to be done to make sure that you've mounted the DR.
Yes, yeah. You
Even
need to,
though it's a read, even though it's read only and not writable.
Yes.
So that on a failover, it actually just promotes and the mount point is already there. And it
yeah. Yeah. Or if you want, you can mount it out. If you have a disaster, you mount it as well. So it does same thing, right? So you can do a pre-work, which is pre-mount the file systems, and then once it's done, you can just one-click promote. That's it. Very simple.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just checking.
Good. Other questions?
Put a load balance in front of it.
Load balancer. Accessing on both, is that? Or
yeah. So could you have a load balancer sitting in front?
On both FlashBlades, are you asking that, or only on one?
I'd like, well, yeah, in front of both your primary and your DR. Noting that one's not available.
I'm guessing it should be possible, but I haven't seen any implementation of that yet. Right? But I can ask around if there is, if you want to, and then I'll update you.
Yeah, that would be good to know, because our implementations, we're a service provider, so we provide IaaS.
Sure.
So we provide this to our IaaS customers.
Okay.
So I need to know how to configure it to do things like that, should they want to.
Okay. Well, check that out and let you know. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
No worries. Other questions? Okay, so let's talk about object replication. So you also have the ability to replicate objects for the FlashBlade, right? So difference between the file replication and object replication, you don't need policies for object replication. It will just be a continuous replication to the target, okay? So object replication is still asynchronous, but it is continuous. So it's asynchronous because we never check if the target has already been, if the object has been received on the target, okay? So immediately we'll acknowledge the write when it's written on the local array, but we will never check the target. So it's still async. But you don't need a policy because it's a continuous replication, right, on the target. We also now, very new, right? We now support on 3.2, I believe, 3.2.4, cascading, okay? So you can now cascade to maximum 2 FlashBlades. So FlashBlade A can replicate to FlashBlade B. FlashBlade B can replicate to object FlashBlade C, right? Only maximum two layers. Fan out is also now supported. Okay, you can now fan out to 2 FlashBlades. Okay, it's very new. And of course, whenever you're replicating objects, we support TLS or on-the-wire encryption. Okay. Another supported is if you don't have a FlashBlade, you can actually replicate to an AWS S3 bucket. Right? And again, there's no licenses in the FlashBlade. Right? They can just use this if they want to. So how object replication works? So if you have 2 FlashBlade, you can just connect the 2 FlashBlades similar to the file system connection. Then you can create a replica link, right? Once you have that replica link, this is an object replica link, by the way. So there's 2 different replica links, the file system replica link and the object replica link. So the object replica link, basically you connect 2 objects, you connect 2 objects you give permission on the source object to write to the target object, right? So you need to give a permission on the replica link. You need to give the access key and the secret access key on the source. So they will have permission to write to the target, right? Then of course, you can also do the same thing and replicate back to the FlashBlade A if you want to. Okay. So how does in AWS S3 works? Of course, you need to have a bucket in the S3, AWS S3. So once you have that bucket, you can now create that as your target. Okay. Same thing, you need to create an object replica link, but the target is an Amazon AWS S3 target. You need to give permission on the source to access the cloud bucket, right? The only thing that that is some gotcha here is that if your data is in the public cloud, there is no native way within Purity FB to get the data back, right? So you need to use third-party tools to send the data over if you need to get the data or the objects from Amazon S3 back to FlashBlade, right? So there's tools like DataDobe, Ingenious, and so much more that you can use to send the data back from the public cloud. Okay. So object replication, again, you have two pairs of FlashBlade. Okay, if you're replicating between FlashBlade, and on the back end, what happens is you trigger a put, right? S3 put on the source bucket. Okay, and then there'll be a tracking within Purity. So once the track that there's a new object, it will just send the object on the target, right? And it will just be continuously sending new objects. So there's no need for you to create any policy. Okay, questions on object replication? Give me a second. Okay, let's talk about safe mode. Okay, so in safe mode, right, by default, it's not enabled. Okay, but it may change in the future, right? But by default, if you delete anything within the FlashBlade or the flash array, so this is for flash array, which is a volume, this is for FlashBlade. So if you delete a file system, what will happen is it will go to the eradication bin. Okay, this eradication bin has a lifetime, a life cycle, right? So the file system will live in the eradication bin for 24 hours. Or if you manually delete that file system, okay? So if you don't delete that, after 24 hours, it will be permanently deleted by the system, right? And that's the default configuration of the FlashBlade, right? What will happen is if you enable safe mode, okay? If you enable safe mode, right? What will happen is if you delete a file system, right? The customer or whoever is the admin cannot manually eradicate the data in the eradication queue. He is forced to keep the data there in the eradication queue. And another thing that you can do is support can actually extend the eradication queue from 24 hours to 14 days. Okay, so the customer can set this either 7 days, 8 days, or maximum 14. Actually, 400 days is the maximum. Okay, but you can do up to 14 days if you want to, right? So you cannot, or the admin cannot delete. Only support, with the help of support, can they eradicate data now. Okay, or if they keep running the eradication queue for, let's say, 14 days, right? Another thing that support will also lock in is the ability to change any policies. Okay, so if you enable safe mode, you cannot modify the policies as well. Okay, so basically there's no trust now given to the admin to manually eradicate file systems. Okay, and that is for file system safe mode, right? So for object safe mode, it is also available, but in a very limited capacity, right? You need to ask your account team if your customer can enable object safe mode. So object safe mode basically is if you destroy an object, okay? So let's say you have a bucket, right? Your objects within the bucket, okay? Even the admin cannot destroy objects within the bucket, right? So they need to always call support if they need to change any objects or delete objects in the bucket. So if they want to delete object, they call support. What will happen is support will now move the objects to the eradication queue, right? And they will give the option for the user to manually eradicate the object on the eradication queue, right? So it's more tighter in terms of safe mode for buckets, but it can be enabled. Okay, it can be enabled. For now, it's only for specific customers. Okay, specific customers only. Okay. Questions for safe mode? Okay. So again, if you can enable this to the customer, please do. In the future, there's maybe changes that this may be enabled by default, right? So in this module, we discussed the benefits of the snapshot, right? We also talk about object versioning. We also talk about replication features, right? File system and object replication, right? We also talk about safe mode, right? So you can enable file safe mode. Object safe mode is more targeted. Remember that. So you may need to check with the account team if you can enable safe mode for your customer. Okay, object safe mode. And there's a lot of gotchas, right? If your customer wants to enable object safe, and that the list is so big, right? So that's why it's only available for specific customers. Okay, questions on this module? Okay, if there's no questions, we can go to our knowledge check. All right, so first question, what are file snapshots? Okay, A, B, C, or D? Very simple.
D.
D? Is that D or B? Did I hear it correctly?
D.
D. Yes, it's a point-in-time view of the file system, right? It's just pointers. Okay. Correct. Next question. Object versioning. What is object versioning? Okay. A, B, C, or D?
A.
Sorry?
A.
A, yes. It retains the objects using a version or a generation ID, right? Good. Next is two types of replication that are supported on FlashBlade. A, B, C, or D. There's two, select two.
A and C.
A and C, right? So we support file, async replication, and async object. Right? There's no synchronous replication yet on the FlashBlade. All right. So A and C. Last one. What is the unique feature of Purity FB that allows us to offer safe mode? Okay. So same with FlashArray. What is the unique feature that makes us use safe mode? A, B, C, or D? B.
B.
Yes. Yeah. Correct. Because we have eradication bin, right? So whenever you delete a file system in FlashArray, if you delete a volume, it will go to the eradication bin. So what happens is we just lock the eradication bin, right? So even admins cannot delete or permanently eradicate the file system, right? So again, you can extend the eradication bin from 24 hours all the way to, as I mentioned, you can even extend up to 400 days if you want to, right? But I don't think someone will go up to 400 days because the amount of capacity that they will require will be so big. Okay, so that's the first two modules. Okay, so for that, let's take a 30 minutes break. And then let's continue after 30 minutes. All right, so again, relax, grab your coffee, and see you after 30. Bye-bye.
Okay.
A.
You are just that guy.
Okay. So hope you had a good break. Let me just open our next module, which is sizing. Okay, so let's start. So this is the sixth module for this class, third for the day. If I can write, cannot write. All right, there we go. Okay, so in this module, we're gonna discuss what are the information, relevant information that are needed to size a FlashBlade, right? And of course, we're also gonna talk about the effect of data reduction on the capacity for FlashBlade and capacity numbers based on the type of blade and the number of blades, right? So each blade will have you have two types of, in terms of capacity, two types of blades, right? And how many of those in terms of raw and usable can be used by the customer. And of course, how can you as a partner can look for this sizing information in our support site. Okay, so let's start. FlashBlade sizing. So whenever you are sizing a FlashBlade, say, we need to get as much information as possible. Okay, the more information, the more accurate our sizing can be, right? So in terms of sizing, workload is very important. Okay, what is the application that the FlashBlade is going to be used for? Like, is it going to be used for packs, analytics, backup, okay, log files? Is it raw intensive, right? Or read and write intensive? Is it both, right? Number of clients is also very important. Remember ECMP? We need to make sure that there's a lot of streams going to the FlashBlade. What are the protocols? Is it S3? Is it only NFS? Okay, is it SMB? Do they need to enable native SMB there? Okay. Capacity is, of course, very important. Right? What are their current requirements? Do they expect any growth? Right? Probably they also have some bursting requirements. So they have probably some peak capacity requirements. Right? In terms of performance, what is the expected read and write IOPS that they need? Okay, do they have a lot of metadata updates? Right? Do they have mostly changes in their data sets? And another thing, do they need replication? Do they need snapshots? Right? So those are very important information for retention capacity, right? So especially if they need safe mode, we need to make sure that the retention is extended to the X number of days they want to enable the safe mode, right? So what workloads to consider for the FlashBlade? Okay, so again, the FlashBlade is a big bandwidth array. It's built for huge number of clients, right? So an approximation here is that you need to have at least 30 clients per chassis, right? So again, this is because of ECMP, or 4 clients per blade, right? Remember ECMP hashing, so we don't maximize a single TCP connection. The more clients accessing the blade, accessing the FlashBlade, the better. All right. So there's also a question of usable capacity, right? So each blade has its own raw capacity and of course usable capacity. So your raw, so we have two types of blades, the 52 and the 17 TB, and those are raw. Okay. You need to less the overheads for that. So we need the protection overhead, the metadata overhead, and you're gonna get the usable capacity. Okay. So for a 7, let's say if you want to have 7 17 TB blades, it will be 123 TB raw, but the actual usable is only 65 TB. Okay. So this is the only amount the customer can store data to the FlashBlade. Okay, so each blade, as I mentioned, we have 17 and 52. So for 17, more or less, the usable will be about 9 terabytes. For 52, more or less, it will be about 28 terabytes. Okay. Again, these numbers will change the more blade that you add on the FlashBlade. Okay. So for a one chassis with 17 TB blades, it's about 65 terabytes. Okay. So for a 10 chassis with 52 terabyte blades, it's about 5.3 petabytes. Okay. Or about 5 petabytes. And that is just usable. We're not talking about effective capacity here. Okay. So again, depending on the number of requirements in terms of capacity, you can start from 7 up to 150 blades. Okay. Or 1 to 10 chassis. So you can assume that each chassis that you add, you're going to have 535 terabyte usable. Okay. Assuming that you're adding one chassis of 52 terabyte blades. Okay. So this is 52 terabytes by 15, just to make it clear. So I mentioned effective capacity, right? So usable, again, is raw minus the overheads, right? Effective capacity is determined by your usable times your data reduction. Okay. So here is basically some data sets. So remember, in the FlashBlade, we only have one type of reduction, which is the compression. We use LZ0 compression, right? So LZO means a Lempel-Ziv-Oppenheimer type of algorithm. Okay. Not all data can be compressed. We cannot compress a encrypted data. Okay. It's just 1:1. And of course, if you want to get the approximate reduction, you can use an gzip on a sample data for a customer, right? So here is on the right side, you see here an example of getting the expected effective capacity. So depending on the usable, right? So this is the usable. So this is the data set. If they have data reduction of 3, basically just divide this by 3. And they get 20 terabyte of usable, right? So different data sets, probably you're going to get different compression rates, right? So this is our effective capacity. So these are all effective capacity based upon the compression rates and the number of blades. So these are the number of blades here. So you see here, if you have 15 blades or one chassis, that will basically is just 264 for a 17 TB blade for a raw capacity. But if you have a very high compression rate, you can go up to 535 terabytes of effective capacity, okay, because of the data reduction. Okay. So the higher the data reduction, the higher your effective capacity is. Okay, this is an example for your 52 TB blades. Okay, you can reach up to 1.6 petabytes for a single chassis. Okay, 1.6 petabyte in a 4U chassis, and that's huge. Okay, so the FlashBlade is a scale-out array. So if you add the blade, it will add capacity and it will add performance. Okay, so one blade can give you 1 gigabyte of throughput. Okay, because of the connection between the FM going to the blade is 10 gigabit per second. So you divide it by 8, more or less, we round it off to 1 gigabyte. Okay, of raw performance per blade. So if you have 15 blades, you can get 15 gigabytes, right? And if you have a single system in a chassis, you can actually get an IOPS or NFS, take note, NFS IOPS of up to 1 million. Okay, So each blade, 1 gigabyte per second read. Writes is much more slower because of the erasure coding that we still need to do. Sorry, something fell over. The erasure coding that we need to do, so that's why it's much more slower, right? Give me a second, something fell. All right, the wall clock suddenly fell. Don't know why. Probably there's some ghost here or whatever. I'm the only one at home, so yeah. So this is the performance in terms of read and write per blade, right? And you can times this by the number of blades that you add on your cluster. Okay. So additional sizing considerations, right? So you need to also talk to your SC about this whenever you're sizing. So if data is encrypted going to the FlashBlade, right? Basically, there's just one-to-one data reduction there. We cannot compress any encrypted data, okay? Performance will also be lower if your data is encrypted, okay? Compression rates, again, you can get a sample gzip for a sample data to get the rough compression rate for your customer. If safe mode is on, okay, make sure to add additional snapshot retention. Okay, this can be done by the sizer, which the SE will be helping you on sizing it properly if you're enabling safe mode on the FlashBlade. In terms of network sizing, remember LACP, in a single LACP connection, it will be as fast as the slowest physical link. So even though your customer is running 100 gig networks from the server going to the switch and from the chassis, case 40 gig, but from the chassis going to the blade, it's just 10 gig, okay? 10 gigabits, this is small b, right? And that's why if you divide this by 8, it will be about 1.25 gigabytes. And then the 0.25, probably these are probably your overheads for your protocols, NFS, and SMB. So you round it up to 1 gig per blade. Right? That's where the read bandwidth per blade comes from. Okay. So 1 gigabyte per blade, you times it by the number of blades. Okay, and that's what you can get for per chassis, right? So 1 gigabyte per blade, and in terms of writes, much more slower. It will be 300 megabytes. But in terms of networking, it will be as fast as your slowest physical link. Okay, so maximize the number of connection to all of your blades. Okay, remember ECMP, and of course, the more hashing of your ECMP to more blades, the better your performance. Okay, so as I mentioned, more connections to the blade, the better. So recommend 4 client connections per blade. And if you have very limited connections, hopefully you have multiple NICs because you can change your source IP. Okay, for your ECMP hashing. Okay, remember ECMP is source TCP IP, okay, and destination TCP IP. Right? Destination port, destination IP, source port, source IP. Right? So if you have different source IPs, okay, even though you have limited clients, then you can still use this to hash to multiple blades, right? So you can create more streams going to the client. You can also add different data VIPs, okay, multiple data VIPs. So what you're doing is you're changing the destination IP, okay? So you can hash the multiple IP, so you can add more data VIPs whenever you're mounting a file system, okay? So it will hash to another blade, okay? What else? Rapid File Toolkit for managing all of those millions of files, because it will use the parallelism of the FlashBlade. If you have a new Linux version, right, of your servers, you can use NConnect. Okay, so what NConnect is changing is your destination IP destination ports. Okay, so you can specify multiple TCP ports. Okay, on your mount point. For S3, okay, so S3 is already built around concurrency. Okay, so because it's used object ID for this, so it will basically hash to multiple blades as well. Some apps, okay, can improve performance. So there's some apps to manage objects. There's an S3 CMD and S5 CMD. S3 CMD uses a single threaded, right? Compared to a much more faster S5 CMD, which use a multi-threaded, multi-parallel connectivity to the FlashBlade. So if you're managing your objects, okay, better to use applications that use multi-threading, okay, which is like S5 CMD. Okay, so here is after getting all of those information, okay, remember from the first slide, once you get all of the information that you need, make sure to engage the Pure Account team, okay? Partners, you guys should always engage the partner SE whenever you want to size the FlashBlade, okay? They will have a software, okay? They will have a sizing document that can size the FlashBlade more accurately. So we have internal tools, okay, that can do that, right? We don't have that tools yet available for the partner, but it will be available probably soon, right? But not yet as of today, okay? All detailed calculations for your specific customer for FlashBlade will always be going through the Pure SE, right? So just make sure that you collect all of the information here, right? So the first step whenever you're sizing a FlashBlade is you need to register that particular customer, okay? Register this, okay? Once you register, an SE and an account will be AE and an SE will be assigned to your customer, okay? So once you have that, you should be able to document your opportunity. You give the SE all of the information, okay? Then of course the SE will be able to size it accurately, okay? Once the deal reg is approved, okay, the assigned SE will be able to give you a detailed sizing for your FlashBlade, right? Again, pure SEs have access to more internal sizing softwares, and which is not available for our partners yet. Okay. So accessing the sizing information that we have for you guys. So we only have 1 KB. If you want to size, it's a quick sizing for your customer. If you want to do it, it will give you a raw, and that is what is the usable capacity depending on the data reduction. Okay, and you can get this on our support website.
To access the FlashBlade sizing information, first navigate to support.purestorage.com. Next select FlashBlade. On the FlashBlade page, scroll down and select FlashBlade Hardware. On the hardware page, scroll down to FlashBlade Product Information. Under that heading is FlashBlade Sizing. On the FlashBlade Single Chassis Usable Capacity Sizing page, there are numbers for 17 terabyte, which is 16 TB, and 52 terabyte, which is 48 TB blades, including effective capacity based on achieved compression rates. This is the sizing information available to partners. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, so that's the only sizing information for now available for you guys. So let me just get that link for you. So FlashBlade, it's here. Yeah, there you go. So you can bookmark this. I'm just gonna put this in the chat. So you see here, we have based on the data reduction. Okay, so you have your data reduction there, and depending on the type of blade, right? So 17 TB is actually 16 TB bytes. Okay, TB bytes. Okay, then of course you also have your 52 TB, which is about 48 TB bytes, right? So you can get the usable, right, depending on your effective capacity here. So 1:1, you'll get your, let's say 7 by 52, you'll get 197 terabytes, or 179 TB bytes, okay, for 7. You see here is the raw. These are the raw. Okay, and that's the only information for now. Okay, then as I mentioned, the detailed sizing will always come from the SE. Okay, you need to contact the SE for your detailed sizing.
To add,
Okay. Then of course, the FlashBlade also comes with a guarantee, right? We have love your storage guarantee. It basically means that customers can try out the FlashBlade for 30 days, okay? And if they don't like the FlashBlade, or they're not happy with the FlashBlade, they can actually return it, okay? And they will get a full refund, right? Of course, before they return, we will make sure that we make them happy. What are their issues on the FlashBlade? And then, of course, if they're really not happy, we will give them money back guarantee for 30 days, right? No questions asked. Okay, so again, we discussed what information are needed to size a FlashBlade. Okay, the effects of data reduction regarding usable capacity. Right? You have also raw numbers. You also have usable numbers depending on the type of blade, and how many blades you put within the chassis. Okay, and of course, how to locate the sizing information, which I put there in the chat. Okay, that's the only sizing information for the FlashBlade for now. Okay, any questions on the sizing module? Right, so again, unfortunately, we don't have much sizing options for you guys for FlashBlade compared to the Flash Array. For the Flash Array, you can actually access the sizer, right? The sizer there from the partner portal. Okay. There's no question. We'll now go to the knowledge check. Okay, first question. How is the effective capacity determined? Okay, I wrote this earlier. I talked about this earlier. A, B, C, or D?
C.
Raw capacity divided by compression. Wrong.
D.
That's wrong.
Multiply.
Yeah, multiplied. Yeah.
D.
So usable
D. Other one.
times the DRR. Correct. So it's D. Next. Which information is important to collect when sizing a FlashBlade? Okay. A, B, C, or D?
D.
Yeah. You're going to need all of this. Okay. And make sure to give all of that information to your SE, because now only the SE can size accurately a FlashBlade. All right. Okay. Last question. What is the read performance per blade in a FlashBlade? Read per blade.
C.
Right. It's C. Okay. 1 gigabyte. Okay. 1 gigabyte. How about writes? Do you still remember?
300.
Yes. 300 megabytes. Awesome. Okay, good. Okay, the last, well, not last module. We still have the summary, but major module for the day or for the course is selling the FlashBlade.
Oh no.
Again, I'm not going to teach you how to sell. This is more about how to position the FlashBlade, all right? So hopefully the tips here will be helpful for you whenever you're talking to the customer. Okay, selling the FlashBlade. So in this module, we're gonna discuss a lot about Evergreen. Okay, we're also gonna discuss the advantages of FlashBlade, about rapid restore, high performance analytics for AI, machine learning. And of course, we have some solution use cases, a bunch of use cases that you can discuss with your customers, right? And of course, the most important thing for Pure is Evergreen, right? It's the foundation of Pure storage, right? The solution is architected to, or the appliance is architected to be Evergreen, right? So the goal of Evergreen is once you deploy your array, you upgrade it in place, right? No downtime for any upgrades, hardware or software, okay? Whenever you're upgrading hardware, you don't need to migrate the data out, okay? Performance is always given, right? It's always given. So there won't be any performance impact whenever we are upgrading, okay? So you can also modernize the media, meaning you can give more denser flash to your customer, and we can buy back the old flash, right? And of course, the chassis is a multi-generation lifespan, okay? So if there's any new chassis, okay, we will give an option for our customer to move to that new chassis non-disruptively, okay? No migration needed. Non-disruptively use another chassis, okay? Similar to the flash array, protecting the customer's investment. And that's the beauty of Pure, okay? Storage, you can, works like a storage as a service if you want to. So in FlashBlade, we only have one subscription available, which is Evergreen Silver, okay? So in FlashArray, we have two, Silver and Gold, right? So, but in FlashArray, we have the free every 3, the right size guarantee, the upgrade flex. For Evergreen, for FlashBlade, we only have the Silver, which is the guarantee that we give is the 30-day money-back guarantee. That's it, right? So included with Evergreen is your Evergreen storage. So basically your software, licenses, all is included. Support is also included, right? Access to Pure One also included. And that's Evergreen storage. So this is Silver Evergreen subscription. It includes all of the softwares, right? Inclusive within Purity. It includes all your hardware and software maintenance, right? So we'll replace any hardware, we'll help you fix any software issues. It's all included with support. So if you have a SEV1, we treat you like any gold or silver is treated the same, right? 15-minute SLA response time. We don't have standard. We call you 30 minutes, or if you are warranty, we call you the next business day. All of our customers will always receive 15-minute SLA for any SEV1. Okay, including parts replacement, depending on the SLA location of that specific customer, right? And of course, we have FlashBlade as an evergreen architecture. Yeah, we can upgrade the media, right? We can get, customers can get up to 25% trade-in credit for their old blades. Okay, we can consolidate the data. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have multiple types of blades now. So when we released the FlashBlade on way back on 2016, it's only 8 terabytes. Then we have 17 terabytes. We actually replaced the old 8 TB by 17 now. Okay, we're upgrading the customer if there's any failed 8 terabyte blades. And then of course, if the customer wants to move to 52 TB, we can do so. Okay, we can just move the data over to new blades, right? With no downtime, no performance impact, right? And of course, software upgrades are non-disruptive, protecting the customer's investment. Okay, so we can consolidate, as I mentioned, right? So if the customer has 17 TB blades, we can consolidate that to a higher capacity blades, to 15 by 52 TB blades, right? We can, customer can get up to 25% trade-in credit for the old blades. Okay, same footprint, 3 times the capacity. Okay, there's a question in the chat. Oh, from Kevin. Given the world climate and shipping issues, how does this affect the SLA? So are you talking about hardware replacements, Kevin? Blade, SLA?
Yes, I am.
Currently now,
we'll have customers that have those questions. So
yeah. So currently now, as I when in our last all hands, there was also the similar question. And as per logistics, all the stocking within the depot are all there. So we still have no issue regarding SLAs for parts replacement. Okay, probably for new type of new orders, there may be some delay, but for replacement, we still need to maintain that for our SLA or next business day, depending on the location. Okay.
Okay.
Another thing you need to remember is the suitability, right, for the FlashBlade. As I mentioned, the FlashBlade is built for big bandwidth, right? It's ideal for rapid restore, high-speed backup, high-speed restore, built for safe mode, built for analytics, AI, machine learning, EDA. Those are big bandwidth applications, okay? What the FlashBlade is not good for, okay, is your typical NAS workloads like home directories, general file services, right? These are not built for the FlashBlade, okay? And also, for home directories, the FlashBlade will be more expensive, okay? It's better for the customer to just go with FlashArray//C if they just want to use it for typical file directories, okay? If they need low latency storage, that is more for block applications, okay? Probably the FlashArray will be better fit for them. OLT database, OLTP, personally for me, it depends, right? So if it's a throughput focused OLTP database, the FlashBlade should be okay, right? If they need a big throughput. But if it's a more into latency type of OLTP database, then FlashArray will be better. All right. So again, take note, which is whenever you're selling the FlashBlade, right? FlashBlade is more for big bandwidth, right? Big applications, okay? Millions of files, billions of objects, okay? Thousands of streams going in. That's really meant for what big data is, right? So it's not meant for low latency type of applications, okay? General file servicing, that's not what the FlashBlade was built for, okay? So where the FlashBlade is, it's basically powering multiple industries, okay, different industries. So it can range from financial, it can go from your IT or healthcare customers. You can even go with government, right? Secure locations, media, telecom. There's a diverse customers that FlashBlade is already successful, right? It can work with multiple customers. And of course, we also have rapid restore that can be used for FlashBlade. Okay, rapid restore is now growing to some of our customers, mainly because of ransomware, right? So it enables low RPO recovery for a huge amount of data. Okay, because you're backing up to flash, right? So traditional restore from tape for some customers will not cut it anymore, right? Because it's too slow. Customer can utilize the all flash of the FlashBlade to do rapid restore. Okay, and the best about it is basically very simple to manage. Right? So some of our customers mainly use the FlashBlade just for rapid restore and rapid backup. Okay, that's where you're gonna see all of those 10 chassis type of FlashBlade configuration. If you see those, mostly they are rapid restore, rapid backup use cases. Okay, so rapid restore can go up to 90 terabyte per hour backup performance. Okay, and this is because of writes. You're backing up, you're writing to the FlashBlade. If you are recovering, it can go up to 270 terabytes per hour because this is mainly reads. You're reading the data out. Okay, we have a bunch of white papers for this, so you can do this for SQL Server backup and restore, or you can use it for rapid restore using Veeam, Commvault, Veritas. We also have what we call Flash Recover solution. Okay, we work with Cohesity, right, to build the Flash Recover solution for our customer. Right, I think I can. There's a link here. Give me a second. Okay, let me copy this. So these are the white papers. Okay, so these are the white papers that you can reference if you want to read more about SQL backup, Veeam, Commvault, Veritas, and of course, Flash Recover. Okay, here is an actual customer of ours using rapid restore, right? So their previous architecture is very expensive, so they use back-to-back replication to another server, which basically costs 45,000 per server. Each server will have 6 PCIe SSDs, right? 3 for database, 3 for fast recovery, and this is a very expensive configuration. Then they came to Pure. We reconfigured their architecture, right? So previously, from 38 hours for a full recovery or full restore, right? Using the new architecture, backing up now to FlashBlade, using a much more cheaper server, their restore now is just half an hour for a full recovery. Okay, 50 times increase in restore performance. All right, and this company, okay, we cannot tell the name, but they're one of our biggest customers now. Each of their rack actually has FlashBlade and a flash array, okay, in their data center. Okay, so again, because of their rapid restore, each of their rack now each has a FlashBlade for their rapid recovery solution. Okay, so another thing, FlashBlade is a high performance all flash array. Okay, and we see a lot of our customers using FlashBlade because of performance. Okay, some of them are Chronopost, right? Chronopost basically has 70% faster backups now because they're backing up to FlashBlade. Okay, Town News, right? Town News now basically from 45 days, okay, to 30 minutes running storage reports, and that's a huge jump because of the performance of the FlashBlade. Okay, what else? Changun Memorial Hospital, right? They get 7 times improvement in terms of computing efficiency running the data from the FlashBlade, right? So FlashBlade is giving more performance to our customer. And there's so much more than that is we cannot make public for our customers, right? So here's another use case wherein one large telecom, this is based in, I believe, in Thailand, right? So they're running a bunch of ETL jobs. So in 2013, okay, they have about just 50 ETL jobs. Then by 2017, they're already missing their SLA, okay? And then when they moved to FlashBlade, now using Oracle RAC, they're now meeting the SLA, right? So it gained 70% performance improvement. Okay, and again, they also use FlashBlade as their backup. So their previous backup time takes about 16 hours for a full database backup. So using FlashBlade as a target, okay, now backup time was increased in performance by 8 times. Okay. So again, this customer, basically their database is around 19 terabytes. They also have compression. FlashBlade has compression that gave them 2.7:1, which they're very happy with. And now, because of performance of the FlashBlade, it gives them more 70% reduction in ETL time. Okay, 8 times faster backup. And another good thing, because the FlashBlade comes with compression, they don't need to buy the Oracle compression licenses. Okay. And of course, this customer of ours, one of our biggest FlashBlade customer, one of our earliest FlashBlade customer, right? So they deal with electronic cars, they deal with space travel, whatever, but they're one of our biggest FlashBlade customers. Okay, so last time when they were not yet using FlashBlade, whenever they have multiple software builds, it takes them about 60 minutes to run about 25 to 30 software builds, concurrent software builds. And that is very, very slow for them. So a lot of their software engineers are just waiting for that software build to finish. Okay. Then they asked to try the FlashBlade. So last time we only had the 8 terabyte blades, and they want to try it out. So they tried it out, and they put them in their app, use that for their application. So they add multiple software builds. By the time they reach about 30, they still within 10 minutes. Okay, because I mentioned the more streams that you put the FlashBlade, okay, it can handle that. That's what the FlashBlade was built for. And they add more streams, concurrent builds. Okay, and they put 60 concurrent builds and still less than 20 compared to the leading competitor. Okay. So they were so happy with the 7-blade FlashBlade that they added more blades. Okay. So when they add more blades, the more compute that they have, right? So now the performance even increased. So for the 60 concurrent builds is now about 10 minutes. Okay. For all of those concurrent 60 builds. Right. So that's why this customer became one of our biggest FlashBlade customers at the first stages, right? The early stages of the FlashBlade. So again, as I mentioned, we do have a lot of real customer use cases, right? You can get these slides, you can get this deck from your Pure SE if you want to present to your customer, right? So these are some of the real customers that we have. You can reference this as well if you're pitching FlashBlade to your customer. So one of our customers using FlashBlade is actually Veritas, right? So Veritas is using FlashBlade for Splunk. Okay, so what happens is so they were using OPEX, okay, for all of their for Splunk, and it's so expensive that they need to go to CAPEX. Okay, they need to purchase an array, which basically means an OPEX to CAPEX transition. Okay, so they reverse from an as a service to an on-premise, right? So what happens is using FlashBlade, it reduced their OPEX cost, and of course the DC footprint also lowered, right? So from 2 million in terms of OPEX, it was reduced to just a 350K investment, which is the FlashBlade. Okay, it increased as well their performance because now it's on premise, and they also lowered their carbon footprint. And of course, the FlashBlade can be easily scaled, so they can add blades whenever they want to, right? So that's Veritas, lower total cost of ownership by moving to FlashBlade. Page AI, right? So this is one of our memorable customers. So Page AI uses AI to diagnose cancer treatment for a specific patient, right? So they use the FlashBlade to house those millions of cancer cells, okay? And they use AI to train their machine learning application to look for that specific image of that cancer cell. So whenever a patient goes to Page AI, so the doctor will basically show the image of that cancer cell of his patient, and Page AI will look for that from millions of cancer cell variants. Okay, and at the end, this will help the treatment for that specific cancer patient. Okay, increase the diagnosis and treatment of the patient using, again, AI, running on the data running on FlashBlade. Okay, this is, by the way, an AV customer, artificial intelligence ready infrastructure. So we have a solution that comes with NVIDIA DGX server, FlashBlade, and Arista networking. Okay, I think I'm going to talk about this on the last modules. We also have Creator Labs, right? So they use AI to provide cost savings to their own customers. Okay, so they customize AI and machine learning AI and machine learning solutions. So basically, they set up, launch in-house data science team for their own customers. And the FlashBlade is the backbone for their compute infrastructure. Okay. So the result, basically, it increased the performance for Creator Labs. So they adopted a fast S3 approach. Okay, they use S3 data stores, right? So it also supports hybrid infrastructure, so they can do the flexibility of the cloud and on-premise easily, right? And the best thing that they love about the FlashBlade is basically very simple, right? Simple management. Okay, Kogo Labs, right? Kogo Labs uses the FlashBlade as a data hub. So they combine multiple applications for the FlashBlade. So they use the FlashBlade for their containers. They use the FlashBlade for their virtual infrastructure. And they also use the FlashBlade for hybrid compatibility. Okay, moving data from on-premise to the cloud, right? Okay, so for CRAB, CRAG is Center for Research in Agricultural Genomics. So from the term itself, it's an agricultural research firm. So FlashBlade basically replaced their legacy disk array, and they move most of their application to FlashBlade, making the FlashBlade, again, a data hub. So they use the FlashBlade for their NFS repositories, and they also use the FlashBlade for their backups. Okay. Another data hub story. Okay. So this customer, CRAG, the same customer, in terms of performance, the write speeds improved by 4%, 4 times. Okay. Backup window reduced by 60%. And again, as most of our customers, they really love the simplicity of the FlashBlade, right? Other solutions that use the FlashBlade. So I mentioned this earlier. We work with Cohesity to create a product called Flash Recover. Okay. So it's a complete rapid backup, rapid restore solution. So it consists, of course, of Cohesity Data Protect, the compute nodes for Cohesity, and of course, the FlashBlade, right? Support in terms of this is all going to Pure Storage. So if the customer has any issue with their Flash Recover solution, they can go directly to Pure Support, all right? So as I mentioned, the architecture was built by both Pure and Cohesity, right? So they can use FlashArray for their primary array, high performance array, and they can use the FlashBlade for their rapid restore, rapid backup requirements. Okay, so again, it uses Cohesity Data Protect software. It uses also the PXG nodes for Cohesity, and of course, the FlashBlade as a backup target, right? So basically, it uses NFS exports or repositories in the FlashBlade. Another thing, okay, so backup to cloud via the Cohesity backup as a service is also available for your customers, okay, to use. Right. ARI, this is what I mentioned to you, Artificial Intelligence Ready Infrastructure. Okay, so this was launched in 2018 with partnership with NVIDIA. Right, so it uses FlashBlade for storage and of course NVIDIA DGX servers with Arista networking. Right, so it's simple. So they can start with ARI Mini, right, with basically just a 7-blade FlashBlade with 2 DGX servers, and they can scale to more compute, more storage whenever they want to, non-disruptively, right? So from ARI Mini, they can go up to 9 DGX servers and let's say 2 FlashBlade chassis or more, okay? So they can scale whenever they want to. Virtually, you have unlimited GPUs that you can add in on unlimited capacity of FlashBlade, right? Number of objects and the number of NFS repositories that you can use. Okay, another one is using Cisco, okay, FlashStack for AI. So similar for the FlashStack for FlashArray, this uses the Cisco UCS C480, right? It's a next generation AI server, right? So it's purposely built for deep learning, machine learning solutions using Cisco networking, Cisco servers, using FlashBlade for storage, right? So again, same thing, it's easily scalable. You can add blades whenever you need to. Same thing with your UCS servers. You can add more servers non-disruptively whenever you need to, okay? So using FlashStack for AI, okay, you can simplify, customers can simplify their pipeline. So they can use Kafka, Anaconda, TensorFlow for machine learning, Keras for their API for TensorFlow. into just one simple array, which is the FlashBlade. Okay, making FlashBlade as a data hub. Okay, multiple workflows, one storage. Okay, so that's basically sharing your data, not just storing it to multiple applications. Right? So that is FlashStack. All right, so that is the selling the FlashBlade. Again, these are just tips. Hopefully, some of these tips is helpful for you whenever you're positioning the FlashBlade. So we discussed Evergreen in terms for FlashBlade. Okay, again, Evergreen for FlashBlade is only silver. Okay, we can do consolidation as well. Okay, from 17 TB, you can consolidate to 52 TB blades. Right. So we also discussed multiple use cases for rapid restore, high performance analytics, AI, machine learning, and we also talk about other solutions. So we have FlashStack. Okay. We also talk about AIRI. We also talk about Flash Recover. Okay. So Flash Recover is using Cohesity. FlashStack is Cisco. Okay. AIRI is using NVIDIA DGX server. DGX server and A100 is also, by the way, can be used for AIRI, the A100s or the DGX servers. Right. Any questions on this module? Okay, so if there's no question, let's go ahead in our first knowledge check. Right? What is included with FlashBlade whenever FlashBlade purchase an Evergreen subscription? So if you have Evergreen subscription, what's included here? Was it not included here?
D, all of the above.
Yeah, so it includes everything here. It includes access to Pure One, software upgrades, and of course, no rebuy of capacity. Right? Actually, 25%. Right? They're not going to rebuy the whole capacity. That's the key there, just to make it clear. Next, customer has asked about replacing their NAS device with a FlashBlade. Okay, what is the first thing you need to ask? So that's the question. A, B, C, or D?
A.
All right, that's correct. So the first thing you need to check is what is the workload? And what they're going to use the FlashBlade for. So don't immediately send them a quote of 1752 TBs, yeah, right? So make sure you know the workload for that specific customer, okay? If it's a NAS, general NAS workload, right, that is not gonna fit for the FlashBlade, all right? Okay, last question. How can modern data centers benefit from the FlashBlade? Again, very simple. A, B, C, or D? Okay.
FlashBlade.
D.
Yes,
D.
everything here. All of the above, right? So they can benefit with the low power of the FlashBlade. Again, one chassis, 1800 watts only. And that's full 15 blades. Okay, massively parallel, fast recovery because again you can linearly scale the FlashBlade as well. Awesome. Okay, now let's do a summary. Okay, before I let you go. Okay, let's talk about the FlashBlade. This is the last module. Okay, so in this course, okay, we discussed how the FlashBlade, okay, basically solve the challenges for our modern data center or unstructured data customers, right? We also talk about some of the market opportunities of the FlashBlade, right? We also talk about the features of the FlashBlade, as well as the hardware and software of the FlashBlade, okay? And the last, selling the FlashBlade, we also talk about a lot of solutions that's being used by our customers for the FlashBlade, right? So again, this is just a very simple summary. And the next step for you guys, if you want, is to further read upon our virtual playbooks on the partner portal. There's a lot of information there regarding FlashBlade. Okay, there's dedicated information about ransomware and rapid restore as well. Okay, if you haven't taken the FlashBlade Architect, please go ahead and register for that. And again, there's gonna be a voucher given to you for your FlashBlade Architect Associate exam. Okay. And as mentioned earlier or yesterday, if you haven't received the voucher within the week, okay, you can email me and I can assist you to escalate for that. All right. So regarding the certification, this is the certification code, right? This is the FlashBlade Architect Associate. 50 questions, 2 hours to finish, multiple choice, multiple select, and you can register to Exam Studio. Right? Make sure to check the exam readiness guide, all right, before you take the exam. Make sure that you check all of those checklists in the exam readiness guide. Okay. And again, there's a lot of resources for FlashBlade, right? So I can email this to you. Okay, you don't need to look for this. I already have links available, and I'm gonna give them. I have all of your emails, and I'm gonna send it over. Yeah. Let me just. I'm checking the names and the participants in the Zoom and your name in the email. So I got Kevin, I got Alamgir, Librar, Surong, and Zayed. So I got all of your emails. Yeah, StarTech, Australia Cloud. Yeah, got it. So I'm gonna send you an email, and of course, it will include the links for this. And if you're gonna request for the recording, let me know. Just reply to that email and request individually, right? And then I can give you the link. All right, and that's basically it for the FlashBlade Architect Associate course. So if you have any questions, right, before I let you go, you can ask them now. So you can ask any questions from yesterday, from today, all of the modules we discussed. Kevin, I'll get back to you on the load balancer thing. I already asked some of my colleagues. They haven't responded me yet. So yeah, I'm gonna get back on to you on that. For the others, do you have any questions before we call it a day or whatever, or I let you go?
None from me. Thanks, Marcus.
All good. How about Librar or
It's okay.
Alamgir? You're all good?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so I'm gonna put my email here just to make sure if you forget anything. send me an email. Right, for any questions you're gonna have about Pure, save my email, and then definitely if I don't know the answer, I know that some persons that may know the answer. All right. So again, thank you guys for joining this session. If you have, again, I'm gonna send you the link for some other readings, and hope you keep safe, take care, and see you again.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye.
Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.